Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Business Requirements webinar series. My name is Stephanie, and I will be the moderator through today's webinar. In today's episode, we'll be discussing how the talent shortage is affecting an overwhelming majority of employers and a couple of things that you might be able to do about it. And with that, we're really excited to bring you 4 experts to walk us through it all. But before we dive into that, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping items. So first off, all attendees are going to be on mute. So if you're having audio or video issues, you can let us know using the Ask Questions section on your screen. And you can use that same section to ask our host questions today about the topic, and we will address those at the end. We also want to let you know that this session is being recorded, so everyone who signed up for today's webinar will receive a link to view on demand. So if you miss anything, don't worry, you'll be able to watch back on your own time. All right. Now I'm going to introduce our host. So first up, we have Ashley Carnes. She's Impact's Chief Strategy Officer, and we'll be talking a lot about learning and development and retention once you get those employees in the door. We also have Kevin Meyer. He's the Executive Director of Marketing Strategy and Operations, and he works for Impact's Managed Marketing team. So obviously he'll have a lot to say about how you bring these employees in the door and get the right talent. And then from the technical side, we have Jim Tarala. He is a virtual chief information officer at Impact. So obviously he's going to have a lot to say from the IT perspective. And last but not least, we have our guest host, Jeremy Habercorn. He is a cybersecurity manager at Dot Security. And I'm sure most of you here know that there is a definite cyber talent shortage. So he'll be talking a little bit about that today. So with that, I'm just going to kick us off here with our first question. So just to make sure all of us here are on the same page, when we talk about the talent shortage, what exactly do we mean?
Well, Stephanie, from I guess my perspective, there's not enough qualified candidates that are available within the cybersecurity arena. There's actually, it was kind of interesting. One study estimated that there were over 1.8 million job openings within the cybersecurity workforce that need to be filled. It's down from the last study number that was actually out there, but I still find that kind of unbelievable that there's 1.8 million cybersecurity jobs out there. So from my perspective, the problem that I see, especially with candidates that I've actually interviewed for various positions within my team and the organization as a whole, is that we don't have enough candidates that have experience and a skill set that's able to fill the roles that we're looking for. Those are some key items that I'm always looking for.
Sure, and from my perspective, one of the things that I see really in my client base is that while they may have a solid IT staff with really good people, what they're suffering from is really just a skill set gap that they're seeing their business needs change, not only due to COVID and just other things, but just sort of business cycles in general. And more needs for data, more needs for software skill sets, more needs for capabilities of deploying new systems, replacing ERPs, and doing all kinds of things like that. That in many cases their internal staff just isn't currently skilled up to accomplish.
I guess to build on that from my perspective on the marketing side, we're usually helping people track down qualified candidates, right? And what we're noticing is a couple of different things. Typically, it's a lack of understanding, like in-depth knowledge of, who these people are exactly, where they're searching for the job, when they're searching, how they're searching, why they're looking for a job. Digging into that, what do they want out of a job? There's oftentimes, we think about responsibilities and technical skills and capabilities, right? And it's important for us to know that because that helps a person understand whether or not they might be able to fulfill that position. But there's oftentimes, more that people are looking for from a job than just to kind of fill a job description, right? So what is it that they want out of this? And then just to complicate things, right, to keep it fun, expectations and desires have shifted a lot in the last couple of years because of COVID and remote work. You've got people saying that they would be willing to take, 5 to 15% pay cuts in order to have the opportunity to work remotely. you have this more nomadic behavior, right? Labor IQ looked at data on 20,000 plus jobs, and they found that people who have changed jobs in the last couple of years, on average, saw a 7% increase in comp. So, that means that people who have been moving around have been getting rewarded with compensation growth that they weren't seeing, before these kind of shifts happened, right? So compensation expectations have changed. And then also, other companies have been changing as well. Different companies have been doing different things, and we compete against those companies for share of this talent, right? So to sum that up, what I'm seeing is typically when we're working with clients, they don't have a deep understanding of the behavior, the job search behavior of the people they're targeting. They don't understand, let's call it the job search psychology, the emotional side of that search, and of their employment search, right? And then lastly, they don't typically have a good grasp of who they're competing against, what these job seekers could get from another company in the space.
Well, thank you for having us. This is really fun to partake in this. There's a lot of takeaways from my perspective that aligns really nicely with what Kevin had just mentioned in regards to the talent shortage. So, Stephanie, I think a few things for me that stick out is this is really being cited as a watershed moment for workplace culture across multiple news publications and workplace studies and data insight report groups. So I think for me, a few staggering statistics that really stick out: 94% of people have reported that they would stay in a company longer if they invested in their career development. Similarly, what a lot of us have known as the Great Resignation of 2020 has been really redubbed the Great Reshuffle of 2021, and as we look into 2022 and beyond. And to that point, and Kevin, you had alluded to this, what we've seen from similar workplace reports is that what previously ranked lower, so in 2019, not too long ago, ranked number 9 across thousands of professional employees in multiple industries, was an opportunity to learn and grow. And that individual characteristic has shot up to the number 1 spot for criteria as to choosing a job and staying with the job. And what that means from a talent shortage perspective, this takes it one step further. Over 4.4 million Americans have quit their job in the past year. More than half of those people have changed fields entirely. So when we talk about the talent shortage, we're talking about the sheer movement and mobilization of people and what they care about and how they align their professional values and their personal values to that of an organization, and that sense of harmony within that personal professional balance. But it's pretty, I think, staggering to know that from an employer standpoint, we have to be hyper conscious as to how we're appealing to these people and then upskilling them when they're making these drastic moves. And so from a talent shortage perspective, again, I think we're seeing that from both a people perspective as well as a resources and a skilling perspective. So there's a lot to take into consideration with all the movement we're seeing.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. So kind of piggybacking off of that, let's just dive into cybersecurity specifically first. So we obviously know there's a huge problem with a talent shortage in cyber. So Jeremy, can you just speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. So when we say that there's a talent shortage in cybersecurity, as far as what I'm looking for and what a lot of other cybersecurity experts are looking for are professionals that have a strong IT fundamental to be really effective. And what I mean by that is, first and foremost, they have to know security. They have to be trained in security. There's a lot of programs out there that can provide this training, which is key to actually be able to be one of the more effective cybersecurity professionals. But in addition to the training, there's other elements that make a strong cybersecurity candidate and someone that can fulfill a lot of the requirements that the security industry is looking for. They need to understand networking and the protocols that are being used. I look for people that have IT support experience. Someone that's actually been in the field, who's seen how to connect computers to the network, know what a domain is, be able to troubleshoot issues that are on everyday that IT personnel have to deal with to help their end users be able to do their job. These are very crucial experiences that will elevate an IT professional to make them more successful as a cybersecurity professional. And you also need those experiences so that they can understand what they're seeing, what they're looking at, what could potentially be causing the alerts that they're seeing, and what they're not seeing. So that's particularly true for like a cybersecurity analyst. Going along those same lines, you need individuals that are kind of like little bloodhounds, little detectives. They go out there and they find vulnerabilities. They look at your systems. They look for stuff that can be exploited, that people can that malicious actors can actually go after them. Go after. Training and certifications obviously are very, very important in regards to this type of field, very much like any other cybersecurity field. Things are constantly changing. In order to better equip these cybersecurity professionals, you have to give them the training, so what they can look at, what they can see, and what they can understand. Familiarity with the tools. So there's a lot more than just an antivirus as far as cybersecurity goes. This is something that we can talk a little bit about later. But there's a lot of tools that they look at that kind of give the cybersecurity individual a big picture as far as what's going on so that they can make better decisions, better act on what they're actually seeing. And again, the understanding of protocols and experience. So these are all crucial elements that I look for and that other managers within our department, or sorry, our organization look for going forward with potential security candidates.
And Jeremy, there's a lot that you've just unpacked there, because that sounds like a pretty high marching order for a lot of people who are eager to break into the field and who are perhaps looking to get more both exposure and knowledge into this ever explosive and evolving field. I think what's fascinating about that is that it really brings to light the skills gap. And again, we hear that term quite a bit, particularly in the learning and development field, because as it's been cited, amid this era of true massive transformation, learning and development leaders are really answering employees' calls for that renewed sense of growth and purpose, but they're also responding to the ever-evolving skills gap. And I think you've touched on that really nicely. There are certainly technical expertise and qualifications that are necessary to allow someone to break into that. And so I think what that has meant for any learning and development professional is they're really responding to the urgent challenge of future-proofing their organizations. And so now more than ever before, learning and development is really having a moment in the executive table, because it's becoming more of a strategic driver in company direction and trajectory. And particularly as cited from a myriad of data insight groups, is that the most pressing items on a learning and development professionals' to-do list right now is answering the call to that skills gap. So if I reference my research here for just a moment, what that actually looks like is 49% of learning and development programs in 2022 across disciplines and industries is that of leadership and management training. That continues to be a big skill, particularly because I think more people demand more from their leaders in this time of world chaos, a pandemic, all the different shifts. That empathy-led management is becoming more important than ever to help align that sense of purpose for people inside their organizations. But right up next is upskilling and reskilling employees to help make them more viable, more dynamic, and more agile inside their organization. That goes right into a sense of digital upskilling and keeping up with the accelerated efforts of digital transformation. And then lastly, there's a whole new, I think, calling, perhaps reckoning is a better word, towards the really purposeful driven work and the importance of the work towards diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And so all of that starts to factor into how do we help to close in the skills gap that could bring more talent to the table for the purposes that you've really just mentioned. So Jim, I think it may be interesting to hear on your end just how IT perhaps handles some of that shortage, how that maybe differs from the perspective of the cybersecurity professional. Jim, do we still have you?
Sorry, the click didn't take the first time around. What I see is really parallels what Jeremy said. You've somewhat closely. The main difference is that sort of in the overall life cycle of cybersecurity, if you will, they're at a point where uh, he's looking for very specific skills at this point in time. And we're just, the overall technology field is really kind of at a point where we're still looking for specific skills, but it's slightly at a higher level, or almost a more generalist level, uh, with a broader skill set, not quite as deep in many cases, and but still point specific to things like moving toward, for example, cloud and Azure and AWS. But I mean, where I spend a considerable amount of my time is really working with my clients on strategic direction, and I just see the pace of change accelerating. And IT teams are constantly being pushed to deliver, the typical, the more, better, faster, and doing it with fewer resources. And what the feedback that I get when I'm in the field with my clients and then talking to IT staff is that they are looking for that, so that skills upgrade. They want to learn more. They want to they want to be involved in those new projects that are coming down the pike of what the business is pushing for. But in many cases, they feel that they're not ready for it. And then that's really, again, that's sort of I guess the definition of the gap that we're talking about right now. So one of the key strategies that really business can use to combat this is really leveraging a lot of the automation and tool sets that are out there right now. And as an example, we spend a significant amount of time on vendor selection and configuration planning and training our engineering teams, that when we go and deploy a tool out that to a client, or actually multiple clients, that it's already properly configured and it's set up and it's being managed by engineers that have an expertise in that area, and it's really able to do that at a speed and consistency that's really difficult for IT teams to do at an individual company, just because they're having multiple things thrown at them at the same time, and they just don't have the time or the energy or the money to really dive in and get to know any of these things that they could leverage if they were capable.
Well, in regards to as far as the cybersecurity goes, um, unfortunately, as far as what solutions or what like IT solutions could be used to fill in the talent shortage, in my opinion, there really is no automated tools. There's no way to automate anything as far as cybersecurity goes. You always need somebody to look at what's actually being presented on the screen. There really is no algorithms, although I know there's a lot of marketing hype out there that says, install the solution and the algorithms and our AI that we actually have will detect all the security events and make you 100% secure. My experience has been that that will usually get the low-hanging fruit, but it's not going to go after what ransomware and what a lot of these malicious actors are really doing and what they're looking at in the background. Anytime you go with any type of defaults, it usually misses a lot of different things. That's why it's always, for a cybersecurity perspective, it's where it's necessary to get human eyes to actually look at what's being presented in front of them, and they can ultimately make a decision and go forward with that to help a client either remediate or try to fix a vulnerability that might be there. So that's my take on how tools could actually help.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeremy and Jim. So Ashley, I kind of want to bring you in here. I know we've talked a lot about from the technical perspective, but from a learning and development side, like what can businesses do on their own to improve, these processes and just kind of account for the skill gap?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that, Stephanie. I think it starts at the broadest level, at the most macro level, which is truly defining and creating and actively cultivating a culture of learning. So a culture of learning isn't an ancillary event. It's not a check the box endeavor. It's not a singular investment. It is an embodiment, a cultural way of life. It's truly institutionalizing the behaviors, attitudes, and attributes that foster an innovative and thirsty culture for ongoing iterative improvement and consistent problem resolution. And I think a big part of that is creating a psychological safety net where people can fail. I don't think there's enough of that in the workplace. And when you don't have that, I think that's where creativity gets stifled. Or where you can create a bit of an echo chamber. So there's a lot that goes into creating a culture of learning. I think having a really intentional team or department or endeavor for a formalized learning and development department can help, of course, drive those initiatives forward. But truly understanding what and how a culture of learning is going to amplify your organizational value is the very first thing you can do. In fact, for anyone that's listening that will be attending our Optimize Summit coming up here in August, I'll be doing a full keynote on exactly that. How do you actively cultivate a culture of learning? A big part of that is fueling a growth mindset and individual coaching behaviors that you can do to propel that type of culture. And then once you have that really institutionalized and you create rituals throughout the organization that support that, and you have everyone actively contributing and advancing towards that culture of learning, fueling that growth mindset, that's where I think the most ripe learning and development opportunities really take shape. So there's a lot to do there, but I think being mindful of the obstacles that may get in the way of creating that culture of learning, because it does take resources and investments, it takes intentionality, it also takes support and executive buy-in from leadership. It can't happen right at middle management and die on the vine. It has to be a true value that is showcased and invested in and bought into from the top. And if there's a reluctance of participation, typically that's indicative of that lack of psychological safety or a detachment from the organization, both of which are pretty big challenges that's going to stunt your growth or get in the way of a high-performing culture. So there's a lot to take in there, but I think it starts at that macro level. And it's I think, a worthwhile endeavor for anyone listening to really inspect within their own organization and see where they can help make market improvements to move the needle. So yeah, thank you for that, Stephanie. I know this can toss into a few different directions. Perhaps we'll take the IT take one more time, and then I know Kevin's probably chomping at the bit to really get into the marketing angle here. But Jim, just curious, particularly for IT, what does that look like? What's the cost of turnover? I know that that's a high attrition field. So maybe if you just want to touch on that quickly before we start talking recruitment.
Yeah, well, I think the sort of the biggest point that I'd like to make here is that there's really an unaccounted for cost that with IT turnover, when you lose people, especially if they're several years in the position. But the latest studies really are showing, and this is completely backed up by everything that I've seen with my clients, is that the cost of IT turnover is really about 6 to 9 months of a person's salary to get them on board and get them up and fully productive. I just have a client just recently that last time we had been there for about 1.5 years, and we're right at the beginning of that sort of 6 to 9 month window. And just based on what I'm seeing right now and the mentoring I'm doing with the new staff, it's going to easily be another 6 to 9 months before they're at a spot where my engineers are comfortable to, and hand things off to them. So I completely agree with those statistics.
I would agree with that as well from a cybersecurity perspective. Training is key to making sure that their skill set is up to date, and actually make sure that the cybersecurity professional themselves are actually happy with the choice they make as far as who they're working with. I was reading some studies that were out there that, in general, cybersecurity professionals, the ones that choose to go into cybersecurity, love their job. They love doing what they need to do. And as long as you show that you are vested in them and continue training them and helping them to elevate their skill set, that is something that they look forward to and they value highly. And it actually then helps them be more productive and helps them to actually be better cybersecurity professionals. So I would agree with that.
Perfect. So, Kevin, do you want to jump in here and kind of give us the rundown on what businesses can do to attract that talent in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, I want to blur the lines a little bit between marketing and the strategic education piece that Ashley's been talking about, and then kind of the staffing, the tools, the qualifications piece that Jim and Jeremy have been talking about. I think the less we put marketing in a silo when it comes to recruiting, and a lot of times we just think of it as a recruiting tool, right? Like it's designed to help us get people in the door, right? And then we kind of stop thinking the same way. Um, we should constantly be marketing ourselves as an employer, right, to the people who work for us. And the big concept that I want to introduce that I think will help here just in general in a big way is, for some reason, for a long time, I think a lot of companies have thought of their products and services as a thing that they naturally market and that like they sell, right? You've got supply, demand, all these different things. People want it, they don't, whatever. Like it's there's the quality of our product or our service, right? NPS score, this and that and the other. And then on the recruiting side, they've kind of been like, well, let's write a job description and put it on the internet and see who applies, and we'll take the best person we can find, right? And we have a careers page and it's got a little blurb about whatever, right? I think we have to shift to think of, on the recruiting and retention side, we are supplying something that there is demand for, which is an employment experience, right? Um, Ashley, Jeremy, Jim have all been talking about different aspects of it, right? Um, that thing that comes together to be like what it means to be an individual contributing to this team within this department, within this company that's on this mission, right, to fulfill this vision. That's all part of the experience of working for a company. And if we start to think of that as something we can design in the same way that we would design a product or a service, right? If we start to compare it to competitors in the same way we would compare our product or service, and start to think about how we market it in the same way we would sell a product or service, I think it can be a big advantage for anyone who kind of makes this shift, right? So at a high level, if we're going to apply that lens, right, there are three main things. If we want to attract, recruit, and retain more effectively, first, we need to get obsessed with our audience, right? That helps us understand and answer all the questions I rattled off earlier. Once we get answers to those questions, we have to stay strategic, right, with the way we act and pursue opportunity. And then we have to follow through, actually, showing that our actions align with what we're saying. Jeremy, he brought up the idea of marketing hype about automation, right? Well, we don't want there to be like marketing hype about the employment experience, right? We don't want to have a reputation or be triggering these ideas that, we say one thing and then we do another. So let's start with that obsession piece though, right? Quite succinctly, like audience research, that's the game, right? You got to find a way to talk to people who are in these professions, who are looking for these jobs, and actually figure out where they are, how they're looking, what they want, right? What are the features and characteristics of a company that you care about? Is it the benefits? Is it the where you have to work? Is it the PTO, the 401k, the vesting schedule? Is it the day-to-day? Is it the office environment, right? What is it that these people care about most? And then how do they hope to benefit from a company? Is it a sense of purpose? Is it feeling like you are a good provider for your family? Is it within a specific IT or cybersecurity role, right? Is it that you want to feel like you're hunting down bad guys or like you're protecting good people? Right? How is it that you want to feel at the end of the day? And we have to understand all those different levels, because we can't just write, the expectations and responsibilities. We have to be able to message to them at a level that's going to connect emotionally. That's how they'll remember us. That's how they'll engage. We call this a foundation of empathy, right? We build that through research. There's also the competitive research side of things, right? I said we're offering a product, right? It's the experience of working for us. it has value, and that value can be evaluated relative to the value of competitors' offerings, right? So we have to look at what they're offering. What is the package? What are they saying? What type of culture are they describing? Do they have all the ongoing upskilling and professional development that Ashley's talking about, right? And like, do they have these things that align with current preferences, that align with job specific desires and wants in this IT space, right? That helps us kind of understand where we line up. And knowing where we line up doesn't necessarily mean we should change what we're offering, right? If you believe that a remote workforce is key, then you have to understand what the value of that is and who it's going to be appealing to, right? If you believe that an on-site workforce is key, you have to understand that as well and know who it's going to be appealing to and why, right? It's about clarifying your unique value proposition from the viewpoint of that employment experience, right? And that gets the things that Ashley talked about, right? You need to have more than just like, we do cybersecurity. Why do you do cybersecurity, right? Why do you offer managed IT? Why are you here? Why are you doing this thing, right? Again, you're trying to connect on an emotional level. People can go do cybersecurity a lot of different places. Why should they do it for you? It should be about more than that, right? So that's the first piece, right? That's getting obsessed. That's getting obsessed with your consumer and your market. It's clarifying your value, and that helps you then be strategic, which quite simply just means you show up in the right place at the right time, saying the right thing to the right people, right? Not to make it too simplified, right? But and you know when and where to show up and how to show up and what to say, right? It's almost like you've got a book of cheat codes in a video game or something, right? It's going to help you connect, and things are going to get a lot easier. And then that allows you to just follow through, right? You've said all these things that hopefully accurately represent what you believe as a company, what you're working to build in the world, how you're investing in your team and your culture, all of the aspects of your value, right? The innovative on-site environment that you provide for people to work in and build meaningful relationships while they do meaningful work, all of this stuff, right? And now the person applies, they're in the room, they're on the tour, they're meeting the team. It better line up, right? You better have that follow through, and your actions, your environment, your culture better feel like what they've read on your website and in these job applications. Otherwise, you're going to have people questioning, your integrity effectively, and you kind of undermine that relationship you've started building. So, that I think is a very high level, very simplified from a marketing standpoint, 3 steps. It takes everything Ashley has said, everything she's said is going to make you more competitive, right? Jim and Jeremy have talked about like the tools and leveraging those things and having, not being like hypey, right? Not using buzzwords, right? Not sounding like you're BSing. And then if you're not doing any of that and you're being smart and you've been obsessed and you follow through, there's a higher likelihood that you find people who are highly qualified, who are going to be great candidates, not just because they want to do the job, but because they want to be part of your team and they want to be part of your organization, right? And that's really what you want, is people who are excited to contribute to the cause, as a cybersecurity specialist or a managed IT specialist or whatever the role might be. And I think that's a collaborative effort all the time, right? Marketing, working with different sections to help make that happen. And then, like Ashley said, you have to learn over time, right? It's not going to always work. You're going to fail sometimes. You're going to get people who aren't qualified. So paying attention and learning how you can be better at all of this stuff as you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. I do have one quick question. So when you're talking about finding the right people at the right time, what are some tactics that you and your team go about to do that, whether it's market research or competitive research? What are, just at a high level, some of those things that you do?
So a lot of times we'll start in that obsession phase, right? Because the first question is like, well, when is the right time? Where is the right place, right? And the only place we get that from is the people who are either looking for the job or are engaging with the people who are looking for the job. So we a lot of times are working with hiring managers. We might be working with HR staff, and then ideally we're talking directly to job applicants. And that can take the form of working sessions, interviews, surveys sometimes. What we're doing is just collecting information that we can go and evaluate to kind of identify themes and trends, right? So, we might identify that I guess in certain instances, we've identified, okay, people are looking for jobs online, but they're not using the normal platforms, right? They're using community forums or types of places on Facebook, right? So, we could post stuff on LinkedIn like crazy, right? But that's not where these people are looking for jobs. They're looking for them in this specific place. It might be a Reddit subthread or something like that, right? Depending on who you're looking for. So you kind of have to go down this rabbit hole of like waiting to find the answer, and you have to kind of go and look at what all the answers could be. And sometimes it is LinkedIn, right? Sometimes LinkedIn is perfect, and LinkedIn is set up to where you can promote job posts, and it's the same with Indeed and Glassdoor. They're all doing roughly the same thing, right? You're going to start to find more qualified people the more you understand who you're looking for, right? Like, for instance, if you show up in a Reddit subthread, you have a little bit more street cred there already because you knew about that subthread in the first place and you knew that it was a place you could show up. And there's already this little like, okay, like I might take this a little more seriously, right? You're going to be less likely to have to filter through lower qualified candidates. It's more likely that anyone that comes to you through that angle they're already interested. They've looked at the thing, right? So I think, if it's a Facebook community, you might have to join that. You might have to join the subthread. And when you move into the non-digital world, we've had clients we've worked with where the people that they're looking to hire aren't looking for jobs online. It's through word of mouth. It's through physical, community locations. It's through, the environment, the neighborhood, the city that they live in, right? And so starting to understand what are the tactics that we need to change, right? It's no longer a job description that we write and put on LinkedIn. It might be a flyer or a poster. It's supporting a farmer's market or a block party, or like it's showing up as a sponsor. You know what I mean? And that now you start to align. Like if you show up as a sponsor or you're already investing in the community. You're starting to show like, yeah, we actually do what we say. We actually care. All these different things, right? So to answer your question, like how do you show up in the right place? Like, it's again, you get obsessed, right? And through that obsession, that's how you get that idea of like what the quote unquote, I'm not going to say right, but like what the better or best places are for you to be, right? And then you start to get an understanding of what you need to say when you walk in that room to be taken seriously and to be legitimately considered. And then, you have to follow through. But yeah.
Right. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So kind of to bring this full circle, I know we've alluded a little bit to, working with a managed service provider to kind of help and fill these gaps. So I'm going to kick it off to Jim first, but just from your perspective specifically, like what are some of those benefits that a managed service provider like Impact could bring to someone who is facing an IT talent shortage?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, not just Impact, but any good managed services provider has already made the investments that the average company just can't afford, and they should be bringing a wealth of standards and best practices that really can help an organization, quickly bring up their operational efficiency, and that in the end leads directly to the bottom line. But more importantly, a good partner really frees up your internal staff, I mean, to focus on those bigger rock items that not only do your staff want to work on, but that really the things that deliver greater value to the organization. And those are just sort of kind of the core fundamentals of what what's available.
And just to add on to that, what Jim was saying, as far as an MSSP, which is it's managed security service provider. To the same point, we've taken the time and we've invested many, many hours sitting there vetting the tools, finding which tools actually work best with each other to provide the best security posture and the best security solution that we can offer to our clients if they should choose to go with us, or any MSSP is going to offer you the best solution that they think will provide the most security for their clients going forward. The real benefit to that is that you don't have to dedicate the time for an individual to just solely look at security events going forward, that they can continue to support your clients, your workers, and making sure that they have access to the data, that they can do their job, that they can go forward with. And then knowing that you actually have a team on the other side that's actually watching your security events and trying to keep the company as secure as possible. Unfortunately, just like any good IT backbone, money has got to be invested to provide security as well for that. And that's where an MSP can really take advantage of that and give you a cost saving in that regard.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's so fascinating to hear how that would specifically apply to each of your core disciplines. I think from my perspective, my background here at Impact was over 7 years on the front lines inside the customer experience and being part of the consulting, the tactical mapping, the discovery, the problem resolution. And what I've come to find is that in working with a partner like Impact, one that is particularly unique in the marketplace because of a very diverse and wide breadth of services and a portfolio that spans all facets of organizational health, that allows us to be wildly cross-functional. And why I find that to be helpful to prospective clients or current clients alike is because there is an overarching sense of advisory and advocacy that is just a really unique perspective. So knowing that today's typical small to mid-sized business and even small enterprise typically doesn't have the full capacity, bandwidth, wherewithal, time, resources, or expertise to truly develop, hire, retain, maintain, tool, and upskill all facets of your business's IT posture, cybersecurity effort, digital transformation efforts, manage marketing plan. There's just not enough expertise and to go around. And so in working with a partner like Impact, I find that there's just a lot of power in the big picture, and creating truly a deep bench of resources through that ongoing partnership, and having somebody to just be a sounding board, a gut check, and perhaps ask some of the tough questions that helps to drive the needle forward and really move an organization up the digital maturity scale. We know that's a big piece of talent retention, as well as working in an agile modern workplace. And of course, one that continues to invest in your professional development is just a home run. So from my perspective, there's just a great sense of power in the big picture.
Perfect. So one other just last question I have, and this is more for Jim and Jeremy possibly, but a question that we get asked a lot is, if we do partner with Impact or a managed service provider in general, like from a technical perspective, do we need to have in-house IT staff, or is that something we can just, bring on our MSP and they can handle everything? So Jim, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, part of that answer really does depend on the size of the organization. But at the end of the day, I mean, this really is a partnership. And I mean, as a VCIO, I mean, I spend, a good portion of my time, working with my clients and setting strategy, and then shifting into execution mode and with our engineering team and their IT staff if they have them. I also really spend quite a bit of my time working with my clients and developing and mentoring their IT staff, and letting them, so that they can grow and they can expand their capabilities and move into other areas. But this really does require a partnership, and it requires buy-in and ownership at the executive level within your organization. We can do a lot of things. We really, sort of, focus on keeping the lights on and the trains running on time. And that does free up, if you do have staff, that frees up your people to focus on those bigger rock items that do deliver the value and really help you move the organization forward. That's where the partnership comes in at. So it isn't necessarily just a straight, yes, you can get rid of everybody, which I'd never recommend. But if you don't have anybody, if you're a smaller organization, we definitely can come in and really backfill everything and get you back to the trains running on time. So it's a further conversation, but it really is a partnership. I can't stress that enough.
Hey, Jim, can I bounce a question off of you? So in some situations, you've mentioned this a few times, in which we could help to address some of the both remedial as well as operational nuts and bolts of IT, so that an organization can focus on their big rock projects, as you've named them. Is it true to say, I believe I've seen this in certain client situations, that if they have a true love of help desk support, of end user support, of being present to their people, and perhaps that's where they'd prefer to spend their time, and
Sure.
so that nagging list of back burner big picture IT projects that never gets executed because they're consistently working on the ground floor with their people, that we could also engage at that level, right? So it's really more so about understanding what the organization prioritizes, what current resources they have, and then how we could potentially both mirror that and align with that and fill gaps in people, process, and technology to make that best possible outcome. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely, and that's where that partnership comes in at. You know, we and the buy-in and ownership at the executive level. That's, you know, we first need to start with that strategy of, you know, not only where's the business going, but where do you want us to fit, and conversely, us offering how our opinions and advice of how we can fit, and to really leverage both. Definitely.
And I would just like to add into what Jim was saying as far as the cybersecurity services that we offer. Again, it's a partnership. You're working with the client to ensure that you keep them as secure as possible. To that end, cybersecurity is not necessarily there to replace or, to replace any IT staff or to even be IT staff within the organization. We're there to augment what IT staff is available and work with them to provide remediation and security services and let them know what's going on, where they should go remediate, and what to do. So we really do depend on security individuals being there to help us to provide the best service for the client. So like Jim mentioned, it's a partnership.
Okay, well, that rounds out our last question. So thank you all to our hosts. We're going to hop into our audience Q&A. So to our audience, if you have any pending questions, make sure to throw them in the Ask Questions section on your screen right now. But we will hop into just maybe one or two here. So let's see. So the first question, which I think is a really good one, is where do you see the talent shortage manifest outside of IT and cyber?
Is that to anybody?
Yeah, just to anyone who.
Sure. Well, I'll take first stab at it. So what we're seeing in a lot of my data here would be grounded in the workplace reports research, which are informed by different data insights and analytics groups. So there's certainly a lot more industries that have been more heavily affected by the pandemic in terms of a mobilization of workforce, which of course then results in a potential shortage of talent. So after the pandemic, this reshuffling, this was reported in Forbes that of those 4.4 million Americans who quit their jobs, over half of which went to change fields. The industries that were most adversely affected were that in hospitality and other sectors that were hit the hardest throughout the pandemic. So that presents opportunities for those people to, of course, enter an entirely new field. That, of course, creates a lot of needs from a learning and development professional standpoint of then how to upskill or fill in that skills gap to acclimate a new workforce to new fields and new industries. So I think we're going to see that across the board. If we're talking about within an organization, however it's structured from a corporate environment, I think we continue to see that skill set shortage, and Kevin can speak to this perhaps in the holistic nature of how folks approach marketing, and perhaps where that starts to, certain aspects of a marketing strategy may be more saturated than others from a talent perspective, particularly given the shift to how brands are engaging with consumers in social media and in different ways that people have different expectations of the brands that they're loyal to and how they engage with them. Otherwise, what we're also finding is that with the acceleration of digital transformation, that's also starting to create a sense of obsolescence in other jobs. So heavily data entry jobs that are notably right now taking knowledge workers and giving them monotonous, mundane tasks that can be automated. That we're seeing, of course, to perhaps displace those jobs and create opportunity for those same people to engage in more critical thinking roles, which of course is the hope of any sort of digital transformation project. It's that you want to allow machines to do the machine work, which could be data entry, data scraping, data web crawling, swivel chair activities of inputting data from one to the other. What we're hoping to see is allowing those same individuals to engage in more critical thinking, deductive reasoning, analytical creativity type of roles to allow for more revenue generating activities for any one business. So we're seeing a lot of shift from a lot of different factors. And I think, again, at the heart of this also is that sense of emotional reckoning that people demand more in their sense of purpose, both from their careers and from the brands that they're loyal to and engage with. And so more than ever, there's just truly, I think, under a microscope, a sense of mission-based and value-based decision-making and how we're responding to real social issues and around the world. So there's a lot unfolding in this particular time.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Absolutely.
definitely.
Kevin, do you have thoughts on that too?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely incredibly complex. Everything you said, Ashley, you know, the emotional component, the emotional reckoning, right? The emotion, the mission and vision driven thing. You know, for the first time in a very long time in the United States, the power is kind of in the hands of the workers, right? And it's a job seekers market. So people in general are like doing a lot of shopping. They're kind of always shopping, right? People get a job and they might still like be floating resumes, right? And it's because I think people are pretty disenfranchised with corporate America. The younger they get, the more disenfranchised they are, you know, and it's, you can't just be offering jobs anymore, right? You have to be offering something more than that. And that is a level of complexity that a lot of the companies we work with, they're not prepared to communicate at that level, right? So that's a challenge right there. You know, so I would say that I think to go back to your question, Stephanie, it was something along the lines of, have we noticed any particular sectors or areas where we're seeing challenges? I think every company we work with struggles on some level to communicate beyond like the job description, right? Beyond, hey, come do this job for us and we'll pay you money, right? That's like, okay, sure, like that's what everyone says, right? So I think every industry we work with, whether that is people looking for temp workers in like assembly jobs or construction, to companies that are, you know, in more like business services type industries or companies that make products and sell them, everyone has been going through this emotional reckoning that Ashley talked about, and they're having to figure out, all right, we got to be here for some reason other than to like put money in people's pockets, right? They have to come in to work every day for more than just a paycheck. And actually, a lot of people we're talking to, one of the big things that I've heard from a lot of people in the last 6 months is they're talking about the psychological and emotional drain of working remote. So it's a very interesting thing to watch this pendulum swing, right? That when COVID hit, understandably, companies scrambled and IT and cybersecurity actually became even more important than they were before, right? To put all this technology in place that would allow them to have teams working from anywhere, right? But now you've got people who they've been working at a job for 6 months and they've never seen their teammates face to face. They've never been in a room with other people. They have no, it's like they may even feel they're doing meaningful work, but there's the meaningful relationship side of things as well, right? And so it's kind of a constantly moving target. And what we're finding with a lot of the companies we work with is, they all have their own special challenges, and we kind of figure out what to do during that obsession phase and that strategy phase. And then it moves into what Ashley talked about of that test and learn kind of model where, let's try something and see what happens. And then because people are changing and evolving so fast, you know, we might need to change and evolve pretty quickly as well.
And just to follow up on Kevin's comment there, I completely agree. I see all of my clients struggling, but the ones that are struggling the most are the ones that are still in that sort of, let's say, old school traditional sort of, you know, recruiting process. You know, they struggle the most. The other companies in my client base that have really sort of adapted some of the new processes are faring much better. But just in generalizing, I mean, the areas that I'm seeing, hospitality was mentioned before, but the areas that I'm seeing in manufacturing, I've got guys that are struggling, as well as like logistics and trucking and some of those other areas. I have a manufacturing client that is just absolutely, you know, dying for truck drivers. It's kind of pockets, but it's a very interesting of what's out there.
Well, thank you so much for all of you for chiming in here. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, so we're going to close out the Q&A, but to our audience, if there's any questions we didn't get to, we will shoot you an email after this webinar with that answer. But yeah, again, thank you to our hosts and to our audience for joining us today. If you have an extra minute, you can take the survey that will pop up on your screen as soon as the webinar ends. It just helps us get a little bit more information on, you know, some topics that you're looking to learn about and how you felt about today's webinar. And you can also keep an eye on Impact's social media channels for information about our next webinar episode. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.